Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark, or in this case, Pod Maverick Mid-Afternoon. You are joined here on Monday, January 20th at the truly bizarre time of roughly 1:45 Central. I am joined by some different faces that you've seen before. We have Sudarshan and David Trink. We all three actually watched this game today, which, depending on your work schedule, may not have been possible. Dallas Mavericks just lost to the Charlotte Hornets in a humiliating fashion, 110 to 105. Gentlemen, how are you?
Been better.
Well.
About like that.
For me.
Yeah. So this game sucks. And we started kind of talking about it in our pre-show, and then I was just like, we need to go. The Mavericks are now just 3 games above 500. They entered Christmas 10 games above 500, 20 and 10, if I remember correctly. They have now won 3 out of their last 13 or 3 out of their last 14. We're approaching bleak status largely because this was one of the games, if you had looked ahead to the Mavericks schedule, that if you were to write down and assume a win, you would have been in an understandable place because the Charlotte Hornets have been one of the worst teams in the league. However, they're now riding a 3-game winning streak for the first time all year. Some background before we kind of talk about the game. Obviously Luka Doncic and Dante Exum missed the game because of their long-term injuries. Derek Lively, I think, was questionable heading into the game. They held him out, which was definitely a choice. Dwight Powell has a hip strain. Jaden Hardy with an ankle sprain. And then Quentin Grimes was a surprise late add. So the Mavericks were down a lot of guys, and it showed. They even had to play Kessler Edwards 9 minutes just to eat up some time. And, the story of the game for me, I think, had to have been a combination of the Charlotte Hornets' hot 3-point shooting paired with the Mavericks' dreadful 3-point shooting against the I don't know, maybe you could say the Mavericks could afford to play better 3-point defense. They gave up too many corner looks. But Sudarshan, why don't we go with you? Tell me what you think was the story of this game.
Well, the 3-point shooting, the variance in the 3-point shooting was a big part. I mean, we are looking at a team which shot under 20% in the year 2025, which is hilarious. But this is, again, a game where it's a collective meltdown by everyone involved, just like New Orleans. Tyler just posted this in the Slack. I mean, the Mavs, PJ scored to make it 102-98 with 5.5 minutes to go in the game. And then the Mavs scored 3 points afterwards.
That's awful. I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah.
Oh, it was bad.
Oh, no. So, okay, keep going.
And so, to me, the story of the game is mismanagement, both from a coaching standpoint and from the players. We all discussed it. The Hornets went on 2 crazy runs to end the second and the third quarter when the Mavs had built up sizable leads and could have built momentum. And they went up by 9, I think, to end the half, and then the Hornets went on a 9-0 run. 2 of them were just like wide open 3-pointers to LaMelo Ball. And then they built up like, I want to say a 7-point lead at the end of the third quarter, and then the Hornets went on a 7-1 run. So, and just to point it out, the cherry on top of everything, the Mavs actually were in a position to tie or take the lead. And LaMelo actually missed the free throw, right? After they intentionally fouled him, and Kid did not call a timeout. I get it. You want to go, you want to catch them in transition and everything like that, but they had 12 seconds. They could have easily called a timeout.
It's pretty brutal. David, from your point of view, what else were the stories in that game that Sudarshan may have either moved past, because he prioritized the end of the game, or really the end of quarters, which I think is that's a great way to look at this game, because I would wonder if if you isolated the last 3 minutes of all 3 quarters, like what the actual score was, because the Mavericks just really lost their heads in those situations.
I think that's a big part of it. I was really, really annoyed at the end of the first half, as Sudarshan talked about, when they hit those threes to end the half, because the plays that the Mavericks had that led to those. I mean, there was a sequence where Spencer Dinwiddie drove in, shot like a left-handed floater. It like banged off the back of the rim, basically a turnover, because the Hornets got the rebound and shot a 3 in probably less than 3 seconds. And then the next possession was a Spencer Dinwiddie, like somebody tipped the ball and he tried to save it over half court, like so he wouldn't get a backcourt violation, threw it like 30 feet up in the air. They tipped it to LaMelo Ball. He took one dribble and hit a 3 and the game was tied. And I'm like, or maybe that was the one to go down 3. But I mean, that sequence to me, I was just like, you can't be doing this right now. And like they came out of half and the Hornets went up 7. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I kind of was like, that's when I was like, all right, these guys just don't want it enough. To their credit, they came back and outscored them by 14 in the next like 5 or 6 minutes and went up 7. And then they gave it all back. So, I mean, I think, again. And so, I mean, I think the story of this game is the story of the last 2 weeks. Like they have had these just incredible meltdowns at the end of game. Like you think about this game, they didn't score. They scored 3 points in the last 5.5 minutes. Denver, they got outscored 43-14 in the last 15 minutes of the game. Like the Pelicans game, the Thunder game, they surrendered a 20-point lead in 8.5 minutes. How does that even happen? These just like offensive stretches where you have Daniel Gafford 12 for 15 from the floor. I mean, Mark Williams had 4 fouls in the first half and didn't commit a foul in the second, or maybe he didn't commit a foul in the second half. Like They have the biggest thing going into the game that I was concerned about was Mark Williams' size, because the Mavericks just do not have a player on the roster without Lively or Dwight Powell, I guess, that can compete with the size that Mark Williams has. And they did a great job. Gafford was fantastic in the first half of like forcing the issue and putting him in foul trouble and like creating a presence that the Mavericks haven't had. And they did nothing with it. They were tied at the half, even after Mark Williams played like 8 minutes or something crazy like that. And so they eliminated that aspect from the Hornets. And then the 3-point variance comes into it. I don't like variance versus just like some of these threes the Hornets were taking. In fact, I would say most of them were just so open. And it's like, sure, it's some variance, but it's also just they're NBA players. They're not going to be like less than 40% on open threes. There's some degree of openness that just takes away a little variance, I think.
I think there's something to that for sure, because you're looking, and we should probably go. I mean, the Mavericks as a team shot really bad. I mean, 19% from 3 is laugh out loud hilarious.
Yeah.
Kyrie was the only one who made more than one. So if you were to back out Kyrie's attempts and makes, the Mavericks were 3 of 24 from 3-point line. Like, that's some bleak stuff going on here. I guess Klay was only 1 of 2, but I actually want to bump this to the front of the line here. Why do we think the Mavericks? I mean, I know the answer, but I want to talk about it. How on earth are the Mavericks doing so little to involve Klay in this offense?
I'm perplexed. I mean, there was an inbounds play in the fourth quarter where Klay came off of a screen at the top of the key to the corner, and it was like, textbook bounce pass where he had his man trailing, and you throw the ball into him and he takes a corner 3. And instead of throwing the ball to him, they decided to throw it to PJ for a 3, and he was guarded by Mark Williams. Of course he's not going to make that. Like, to be honest, I mean, I would, you have a strong take on why you think the Mavs aren't involving him. I would love to hear it, because I can't come up with a good reason.
I have a take, but I want to hear Sudarshan. What do you think?
Doing something like this would involve kid coaching during the regular season, and I don't think he's capable of doing that.
I mean, there's an element that is part of my feeling, in that the Mavericks aren't running any sets. They are playing like just pickup basketball by and large. There might be one screen, there might be a little bit of action, but it's my man. I'm going to beat my man. And when it's Kyrie Irving doing that, you actually feel okay with it because it looks nice. When it's Spencer Dinwiddie doing it, it makes you either want to plow your eyeballs out or you're really excited about the nonsense shot that he's going to make. But everybody else is kind of interesting. Like there was one really horrid Klay drive and turnover where they just left him alone, which is, this happens from time to time. Basketball teams make mistakes. Hornets aren't very good. And Klay didn't shoot the three, which is fine. He had an open path to the basket. So he takes the open path to the basket, and either Mark Williams or the other Hornets big man steps in front of him, and he just passed it to that guy. Like he didn't even get it to Lively, who was up there for an oop, and it's like, I think there's part of what Klay's going on is he's just not seeing the ball enough to where he's like mentally regressing to where every time he gets an opportunity, it's a bit of a oh shit, am I not going to see this again? I mean, let's take for example the last 3-point attempt to tie the game when it was 108 to 105. He pump faked into nothingness and missed it, and then shot right after. And there's just some real odd situations going on over the course of a game where they aren't finding him. And I find that like very frustrating. It's one thing if you have a drive and kick player and you can pass the outside the way Luka breaks down defenses, but they're not doing any of this right now. Like I'm not understanding what's going on where you're offensively limited as is. You got to play Omax, which we'll talk about eventually. We already talked about Kessler Edwards. There's only so many guys who can take shots, and you don't want Kyrie. Kyrie took 24 attempts this game, played 41 minutes. You want Klay Thompson to soak up like 2 more shots. We're not talking about Klay taking 15, 18 shots a game. We're talking about Klay taking 8 to 12 shots a game. And it's just, I'm not understanding what's going on there. And I really feel like that has been a problem in some of these losses. I think it was it the Denver loss where I lost my mind, where Klay basically scored like 7 straight points and then he just didn't see the ball again down the stretch?
That was the Pelicans.
Yeah. Oh God!
I think part of it is Klay. All teams aggressively close him out on his 3-point shots. So he's gotten into the habit of that pump fake and drive in some sense, or pump fake and shoot. That he does it even when teams don't close him out. It's kind of like a mental thing that you were saying.
Yep.
And also, I mean, we've talked fairly glowingly about his playmaking this season because for us it was that much of a surprise. But there's a little bit of too much of a good thing that's happening right now where he's trying to play make a little too much on these drives. It's like that layup that you were talking about where he just passed it. I mean, the shot is right there.
Yeah. So, or pull up from a short. It's like when faced with 2 choices, shoot the ball or like Pat, like he's ended up making like the worst of his available decision tree choices. And that's like, what's just a bit of a disaster there. So, all right. The next person that I'm a little bit, let's pivot briefly and look, at maybe the one kind of maybe 2 bright spots in this game. I thought Daniel Gafford actually played pretty good, pretty amazing. Scored a career high 31 points, grabbed 15 boards, 7 blocks, some of which were just almost out of like NBA Street. Just really athletic, and the Hornets just were serving things up to him. The fact that Dallas didn't seem to want to get him the ball down the stretch again is one of these just baffling choices. I don't understand. He is a maddening player, and we have all talked about trading him at one point or another recently. But when he plays well, he helps the Mavericks, and it's why it's so frustrating when he plays horribly, because he just takes so much off the table. And this was a mostly good game, I thought.
Yeah, I thought he played. I thought he played really well, to be honest. I thought he was aggressive. I thought he didn't grab. He had 15 rebounds, but early on there were some plays where he just had to tip the ball away from Mark Williams, and I thought he did that pretty well.
Mm-hmm. And the 2 teams kind of were even on the offensive rebound front, which I think was important because Mavericks have been getting killed in that area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know either. Like they've seen the result of bludgeoning a team down the stretch with a big man that is hot. Like Jaren Jackson just single-handedly beat them not even 2 weeks ago because Memphis just kept giving him the ball and he kept making layups and dunks. And now it's 2 games in the last week where against New Orleans and against the Hornets today, he has close to 30 points, and just down the stretch, it's not like the fact that Mark Williams didn't get a single foul in the second half kind of blows my mind because he changed a lot of shots that the Mavs took down the stretch, in my opinion. Like there was a couple threes that he challenged that are really tough shots over a shot contest of a guy his size. And then in the paint, like everything was tough for Dallas in the paint when Mark Williams is down there. So the fact that like you're not even attempting, and Gafford had like a dream shake in the third quarter. Like it's not like he was just getting wide open layups where the Hornets were leaving him. He was in his bag today. He's doing things that I really haven't seen him do. And the fact that you don't like design post-ups for him down the stretch, but you'll allow like Klay Thompson pull-up twos and whatever shots PJ's taking, it's kind of in the same vein of like the not running offense thing. It's just whoever grabs the rebound dribbles up, and like even on that last play, like when LaMelo missed the free throw, PJ dribbles up the court and like passes it to Klay, one pass, one shot. Like
Gafford lurking on like the weak side block on the far side while someone ISOs. And I get the isolation from like this person's an amazing isolation player, but you know who's not bad on the move is Daniel Gafford. Like anytime other players in an offense are moving, it causes the defense to have to adjust and think about something else. And there's no movement in this offense. And that has been a complaint for everyone going back to when Kidd joined the Mavericks. I mean, really to a certain extent when the Mavericks started doing a lot of ISO heavy Luka ball, but Luka's not been playing for a while. So there's nothing that anybody can actually blame on him. Like this is a bit of coaching malfeasance and really the players too, because let's just say Kidd allows the players to call some of the offense, which I think is the case. Then it's on them to run some more interesting sets, and they just don't do it. I mean, the guy who's going to take a lot of heat in this game, and rightfully so, is Spencer Dinwiddie, who has once again sort of become the player that I was bitching about in the offseason when he was signed. Now, of course, when he's played less limited minutes, he's mostly been fine. But the Mavericks are relying on him now in a real way, and he's just not been very good for a couple of games in a row. And that's starting it's starting. It is very apparent when you watch him on the floor. 31 minutes, 11 shots, 0 for 6 from 3, which is just incredibly painful. He didn't, have any loose turnovers, but he's such a sieve on defense in addition to being weak sauce on offense that it's really catching up with the Mavericks. And there's just not much to be done, I don't think. Is there?
No.
Like, give Dante Exum a new wrist? I don't know.
Right. And when you got a guy like Quentin Grimes out, there's and Jaden Hardy, like he has to eat up those minutes. And I don't want to kill him in the way that I normally do whenever there are other options at Kidd's disposal, because we look through the rest of the lineup. We talked about Kyrie Irving's game briefly here, but then there's, the only other kind of effective ball handler on the team that's coming off the bench was Najee Marshall, who, he had an interesting floor game. He had 4 assists to go along with 8 boards and 5 rebounds, but he was 1 of 6 from 3 and 3 of 10 from the floor. And Najee's sort of quietly killing the Mavericks in some of these games, which I hate to do because he was so good before he went down, both with his bout with illness and then the fight with Nurkic. But really, since that Phoenix Suns game with Nurkic, he's had a lot more misses than he has hits. And that just, you get on the internet, and I'm soliloquizing here, so I apologize, but you get on the internet and everybody's like, this is where the Mavericks aren't very deep. And it's like, look, these guys are all playing three pegs above where they're supposed to. So I'm not really sure how mad I'm supposed to get, because like I do blame Kidd, don't get me wrong, but I blame him kind of in the collective much more than I do in the specific. These guys just need to hit some of the shots that are in front of them.
No, I agree. But also the lineup choices were a bit weird. I mean, I know that the team was depleted in some sense, but I think I mean, and I might be hard on the guy, but playing Kessler Edwards 10 minutes in the game, but not giving one of the guards some of those minutes. I mean,
Who would you have wanted them to play, like one of the G League guys in Gortman or Williams, just to
I
see?
would have, yeah. I mean, instead of Edwards, I would have rather played Williams. I know he's
Okay.
a smaller guard, but he's another ball handler. Particularly with Grimes out, it would have been more of a like for like kind of substitution. And the Hornets aren't really, they're not a really big team, particularly when it's off the bench. I mean, who do they have coming off the bench? They have Seth Curry and Micic as their guards. Like, you don't think that Brandon Williams could have sort of moonlighted in some sense in the Jaden Hardy role?
I mean, I
Um,
wouldn't have minded it, but I sort of feel it's kid choosing from a bunch of bad options.
yeah, and he chose wrong again.
I mean, this was just really tough. It's tough to swallow. It was a bet, like the start time of the game. You know, where David and I are sitting there in the playback, and we're both like working and watching and piping in every now and again, and it's just this continues to get weightier because it doesn't really seem like there's anything that's gonna happen soon in certain regards. I wish we could have come in here and talked about kind of a win, and then we would be able to focus on some of the better things more. You know, I see our local just from game to game Kyrie hater in the chat, and he's talking about how Kyrie can't carry. Like, Kyrie played an interesting game here. I think he would like to have had some of his missed shots back. Like, some of the layups that he missed were hilarious. Then he sinks, some of these incredible 3-point shots. Like the 8-0, was it an 8-0 run or was it a 9-0 run?
No, it was an
Yeah, it was
it was an 11 run.
11-0 run because he drew the 3-point foul shot. You're right about that. So he had 2 threes, scored a layup, and then gets fouled on 3 himself, and just really looks like he's about to carry. And then the rest of the Mavericks offense just dies, and that part was very challenging to watch.
He airballed 2 threes in the first quarter, which
that
was
funny.
hilarious.
One of those was like from the logo, and it just kind of looked like Carlton shooting the half court shot where he's like, ugh. I wish we could have talked about Omax. I want to praise Omax, but I wish we could have talked about Omax's performance in the context of a win here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He played.
But Omax was really good. Omax was really good. I mean, he came in the first quarter or something like that, I think, and it was 4 minutes, 4 points, 5 rebounds, and I think a steal or something like that. It's he missed both of his 3-pointers, but he ended up with like 6 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1 steal in 20 minutes. So I think his energy is infectious. It's kind of like, in some way, how the team sort of fed off of Gafford during the stretch run last season. All those putback dunks and the yells and the screams and all of that kind of stuff. It's particularly when the team is basically a bunch of zombies that are running around at this point.
Yeah,
you need someone with energy to actually come and liven things up, and particularly against when we're down like 2 big men, for him to play as big as he did with those rebounds was fantastic, and I think that deserves more minutes in some sense.
I don't know where you fit him in, because Dave and I were talking about this over the course of the game. The Hornets were a really good team to play him against because they're sloppy. So they're not going to isolate him and expose his weaknesses, and he's going to be able to just do the things he's useful for. And he did. He was like, his energy was infectious. It didn't. Sometimes I think over energetic players, like the energy gets used against them. Like, think Josh Green, where he, for some reason, stuck his hand in Kyrie Irving's lap drawing, and then Kyrie drew a 3-point foul off that. Like that sort of overly ambitious stuff can sometimes work against guys. But I think this team needs that a little bit, because if they're going to play this like slack ass offense where nothing interesting happens, somebody crashing the boards really hard in addition to the center it can be helpful. The defensive play, kind of is what it is. Omax is just such a large person on the floor that I think it provides value and in a way that the Mavericks needed in this game. David, what did you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with the take about energy. It certainly made me feel much better about the way the team was playing in the first half when he would get like offensive rebounds and stuff, kind of masked other things. But my take on Omax, I think I kind of liken him to the guy that does like all the dirty work and pickup and like the weird like normal basketball stuff that like no one really wants to do when you're just playing pickup. Kind of what he did today, hustle for rebounds, dive on the floor, get steals, that kind of thing. So when you play a team like the Hornets who basically play pickup basketball, like he's gonna look good because they play a very up and down, lots of missed shots, limited boxing out, like kind of fast paced game. And so Omax is perfect for that. I think like similarly, like the Wizards, those kind of teams, like really just the not good teams that play this frantic sort of basketball, he will look better against. I think though that like did he have a spin move? He had like some like
he did have a spin move where he ended up underneath the rim. It was like wildly out of control, but I liked it anyways.
Yeah, there were some plays. Yeah, I think he got fouled on that play. But there were some plays he had where he looked like he was doing things that could translate to a game against a better team. It's just hard for me to take too much in a game like this, especially like at 11 a.m. where you could throw a guy like that out there and just get 4 rebounds off of the fact that most of these guys are not even awake until halftime. So, I think he should be praised for the way he played today because he played a really good game, and I love the energy that he brought. It's just like they play the Timberwolves, the Thunder, and the Celtics this week. I don't think this should be a thing like, play Omax 10 to 15 minutes against those teams. It's not directly translatable, I don't think.
Yeah. And, the wonderfully named commenter Shrimp Cocktail points out that Omax's biggest mistakes right now are his sort of overexcited nature on defense and not being confident in his shot. And honestly, the only way through that is playing. And, this is, I'm not dismissive of the G League, but the pace and the skill level are simply different in the G League. And he's not going to get those things with this team. So when he does play, they have to put him in situations where he can excel. And hopefully, they play the Wizards in a couple of games. Hopefully we'll see some more time from him there. This just the bottom line here is this is a little bit bleak when we're talking about Omax in the sense of the Mavericks. If the Mavericks are going anywhere this year, Omax is not realistically going to be part of it. That's not a knock on him. It's just not how the team was built. So, to kind of close out this element of the show, I want to look ahead real quick. We got the next 3 games are just a murderer's row, relatively speaking. The Minnesota Timberwolves on Wednesday, kind of an early game on ESPN. Oklahoma City then the next night in Oklahoma City, of course, and then Boston on Saturday on a day game. So it's there's simply no rest for the wicked. And the Mavericks have they win that big game in Oklahoma City and come back and drop this one, and there's just not progress. And I don't want to kick them too much. It's the situation that they're in with this many guys hurt, but it doesn't get better. And there's a real likelihood. Somebody said it was like 2 or 3 games ago, Luka could come back by All-Star break, which is true because I think Grant Afseth reported that All-Star break isn't until February 14th. Like 3 full weeks of games, ladies and gentlemen. And, there's, Dalton Trigg, he and his buddy Drew did a podcast with Nico, and Nico obviously implied that they're looking for things, but the fix to this team is having the team that they assembled play together. And that's just that you can't do anything about that. And it makes making content. Nick Angstadt and I kind of talked about this a little bit difficult because you don't want to hyper focus on the things that aren't working because they weren't designed to work this way to begin with.
I agree. I think one point I wanted to make kind of relating to Kid and the point that you just made is this whole stretch is kind of an indictment on Kid's coaching style, which I think we've talked about how Kid, I think like he's a positive playoff coach, but the way he coaches is a lot of it has to do with having really, really good talent at the top and him trusting that Luka and Kyrie will figure the game out themselves. And in the playoffs, that works because the best players win the games for you.
Sure.
In the regular season, and especially when you don't have Luka Doncic for an extended period of time, you kind of have to change your coaching style a little bit, because when it's Luka Doncic isolating at the top of the key, it's one thing. When it's Spencer Dinwiddie, it's a completely different thing, trying to stop a 8-0 run by the Pelicans or the Hornets or whoever. So like that to me, that's a big thing of, and kind of Sudarshan, you were talking about a collective just implosion by everyone in some of these losses. And I think it starts with Kid just not being able to change the way he coaches for the team that he has, which is a little frustrating, but I don't know how much it means, because in the playoffs, if you don't have these players, you're just going to lose anyways. And so it's kind of a moot point, but at the same time, it's like, you got to start winning some of these games, and Kid has to do something different. You can't keep watching the same movie over and over and think that eventually something different is going to happen. It's the same script.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like we keep saying that Kid's a front running coach, right? He's not one that he's not one like Carlisle used to be, where you give him chicken shit and he makes chicken salad out of it, right? So
right,
he needs a specific set of conditions to go his way for things to actually look positive in that sense. And he's a big vibes coach. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think the vibes are great right now, but so what are we talking about here? So
this is a tough one. Tough one, man. And then Bob Sturm with just a heinous take as usual.
oh
what do
God,
you say?
Sorry, he just talked about only counting the losses. Well, there's been a lot more losses than there are wins, brother. So not really sure what you're supposed to do here. Oh. And I'm not even mad. I mean, I think some people expected me to just come in here hot and heavy after a loss like this, and that's more likely to happen when I'm up till 2 a.m. Now I'm just kind of like, let's get on with our day.
I think we're all just collectively numb at this point. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, last season we'd collectively grown at someone going down with an injury or something like that. At this point, we're like, fuck it. At this point, we're not doing anything. We're down. What's one more injury at this point?
Yep. I think, at least for me, I feel like I'm kind of in emotional purgatory, because I can get as mad as I want about these losses. If the Mavs make the playoffs and they're healthy, I will feel as confident as I've felt about them winning 1, 2, 3, 4 playoff series. If they miss the playoffs, that's when I think all of the emotion will probably hit me, because then that's like all these losses. You're going to go back and look at all these losses. But if they make the playoffs, in my opinion, it's kind of a moot point. I think, because they just have to make the playoffs and be healthy, and I think they're the second best team in the West.
The second best team in the West. Well, let's just hope that they can get out from being. Let's see where they are right now as we process this, because it'll change over the course of the day, because there's a ton of NBA games left. But that loss dropped the Mavericks down. Well, I guess they're still in the 7th spot, so we'll see where they are. They're 12 and a half back from Oklahoma City. Okay, guys, thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon with me, or Sudarshan. I'm guessing it is the middle of the night, so you're great.
It's
for
2 a.m.
2 a.m. You're doing the Kirk thing. Man, you're a legend. All right, everyone, be good. This has been Kirk, Sudarshan, and David. We will be back at another point, probably Wednesday night. Everyone be good. Go Mavs.
Yeah.